Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about a Java program on the rock, paper and scissor game. So we are going to write a Java program for this game, rock, paper and scissor. So first let's try to understand the rules of this game. So the rule of the game is rock can beat scissor. Here in this diagram also you can see a rock can beat scissor and scissors can beat paper. Scissors can beat paper, and third is paper can beat rock. So it's clear in this diagram. And then the fourth is whoever wins 5 times first is the winner. Like the game will be in between the user and the computer. If the user wins 5 times first, then he is going to be the winner. If the computer wins 5 times first, then the computer will be the winner. So let's try to proceed. I already have the code with me. We can go through this code. We can copy this code in Eclipse and try to understand step by step. You can I'll provide you the link of my website, and you can get this code and put it in your Eclipse. But first let's try to understand it. Copy, and let's go and create a new project in Eclipse. File, new, Java project. Project name is rock, paper, scissors. Finish. And here in the src I have copied that code. Let me paste it here. So okay, let's go back. So the player class, okay, let me copy this player class first and paste it here in. Okay, this is something else. Okay, I have copied the. Okay, let's copy this player class. Let's copy the player class and paste it here in Eclipse. Then let's go to the computer class. We have 4 classes in this program. Let's copy them and paste them here in the src, and we'll try to go through the code. Here this one is the driver.java. We'll paste it here again. And the last one here, the RPS. This class contains the main function. We'll also copy this and paste it here. Okay, so we are here with the rock, paper and scissor project. This is having 4 different classes. So first let's see the computer.java. This particular class is going to represent like the computer, which is going to play with a user. So we have created a separate class for computer. We have created a separate class for player.java, and we have a class called driver. This is going to be like a helper class. This contains like the business logic and some variables which will be used in our project. Basically it has the main business logic. And then we have the rps.java. This is containing the main function. Yeah, you know that we should have at least one class that contains the main function, because execution will begin from within the main. So we have 4 classes. Let's go through each of them. Like let's go to the computer.java first. Okay, so here look, public class computer, and we are creating a computer class to represent a computer that is going to play with the user. And here we have a function defined, public int GetInput. So through this function we'll ask the computer to give us a input. So the input it is going to give like it should be a random thing, like rock, paper and scissor. So for that we have used the random class provided in Java. Random is a inbuilt class in Java that will help us to generate random numbers. So we created a random class object here, and then we have called the next int function on the random object. Here we created a random object, random classes object, and through that object we are calling a function called next int. And 3 plus 1 means what? Like it's this random dot next int 3 will generate 0 1 2, 1 less than 3. So 0 1 2, it may be 0, it may be 1, or it may be 2, and we are adding 1 to it. So basically we are going to generate numbers like 1 2 and 3 randomly, and that number will get stored in a variable called input here in the left hand side, and that value is being returned here. So basically this function get input is going to do what? It's going to return back a random number. It may be 1, it may be 2, or it may be 3. Maybe somewhere we have defined 1 means rock, or 2 means paper, or 3 means scissors. We must have done somewhere. We'll see that. But this function, this get input function, is doing what? It's just returning a random number 1 2 3 that is going to represent rock, paper or scissor. The computer is going to give this when we call this function. Now let's go to the player.java. Okay, if you want to see this 1 2 and 3 where we have written about that, let's go to the driver.java. You will see here this is a separate class, and we have some variables here. This is what I was talking about, 1 2 and 3. We have some final variables like rock represent 1 and paper represents 2 and scissors represent 3. This is how we create final variables. Final variables are generally in capitals. By convention they are in capital, like we have this capital variables in Java. Wherever you see capital type of variables, generally they are final variables. So we have made them static as well. Public, static, final, int, rock. Static means you can access this variable without creating an object of this class. We can, so if you have certain constants in your project which is to be used, you put them in one place as final variables, maybe static as well, so that you don't need to even create an object of the class. So here rock means 1 and paper means 2 and scissors means 3. Like if the computer is going to give return 2, then it means it's giving the input as paper, and if it is returning 1 means it is rock. So here we have defined some final variables. This will be used. Okay, so till now we have discussed about the computer.java. Now let's see the player.java. This player.java is going to represent the user who is going to play with the computer. So here also we have certain functions and certain variables. Let's see. So in the public class player, at the top we have a function, we have an instance variable, not a function, private string name. This is called a instance variable. Name is the instance variable in the class player. Instance variable means like every player will have a name. Like in this example we are creating only one player that's going to play with the computer, but the advantage of keeping a class player separately like this is you can create multiple player objects if you like. So player objects you can create. Class is a template of the objects that you can create. So you can create several player objects. Okay, each player can have his own name. That's why we are having an instance variable name. A player will have a name. So we have kept it this variable here. And then we have a scanner object. Why do we create a scanner object here? So that we can take inputs from the keyboard. Let's understand what is this. Scanner is an inbuilt class in Java, and here system.in is a stream object connected with the keyboard. So if you want to take some inputs from the keyboard, you will use system.in here as a parameter in the scanner class. Thereby a scanner object is created connected with the keyboard. So if you want to get some inputs from the keyboard, now you can call some functions on the scanner object which we created, sc.nextInt and all. We have several functions in the scanner class that will help us to take inputs from the user. So basically in the player class we have two instance variables here. One is name of the player, and we have created one more instance variable here, scanner type of object, that will be helpful in getting inputs from the keyboard. So now from the user basically we can get the inputs. So we have two functions generated here, get function and set function for the name variable. This is a good convention actually. Like we have private instance variables. The instance variables are generally made private, and we have public get methods and set methods. The get method, as you see, is returning the current value of name, and set value is helping us to populate the value of name. Like this dot name equals name and return name. So nothing great here. Basically it's a name here. The player has a name, and from outside if you want to access that name you can use the get function or the set function. If some why do we use get and set here? Public methods, and this instance variable is private in nature. So from outside if you want to access this variable you have to use public methods to access it. So that's why we have public getter and setter methods of this private variable here. Fine. So in future if you want to create a player object, you create a player object, player p1 equals to new player, p1 dot set name or get name you can call to get the or set the name of that player. Now after that we have a function defined here called AskName. So if you want to call this function, how will you call it? p1 dot AskName. From outside, like player p1 equals to new player, p1 dot AskName. This is going to do what? It's going to, the user can provide a name to you. Like here we are outputting like system.out.println, please enter your name, and the user will provide a name. Type the name on the keyboard, and through the keyboard you want to get that string, and for that you are calling sc.nextInt. And what is this sc? Here the sc is here the class level variable, the scanner object here, that will be available throughout the whole class. In any function you can access it. So sc.nextInt is going to help you to get the string object that the user will be typing. Basically the name, the user's name we collected here through sc.next, and we stored that value here in the name variable. Market, we are having two things here at the top, name and sc. These are class level. This can be accessible from all the functions within this class. So now inside this AskName we are accessing like trying to find out the name, and then we are doing sc.next and we are storing in the class level variable name. So thereby what happens, the name gets initialized here at the top, name equals to sc.next. It asks for the name from the user, and that we have initialized at the top. So a player got a name, he entered the name, and that is being initialized here in the instance variable of the player object. Now next we want to ask for some input from the user. Here we have a function, we have defined a function called GetInput, public int GetInput. Yeah, we have already seen a function in the computer.java where we were getting some input from the computer, like the computer was also giving inputs in the form of a integer number. Here also we are going to get inputs from the user in the form of an integer number, like rock means something 1 or paper means something. The user will give the inputs. So we have done what? System.out.println select rock, paper and scissor. Again the user is going to enter rock, paper or scissor. So here this line sc.next is again going to help the user to type any of these three alternatives like the rock, paper or the scissor, and that we have stored in a variable called input. Input here, this input variable is holding it, and we have made it to uppercase. Maybe the user is typing in small case, we want to make everything in uppercase so there will be no problem or confusion. Now we are figuring out whether he entered a rock or a paper or a scissor using this technique, like checking the first character whether it is R or P or S. You may do this in several techniques. You can have the equals function of the string class and all, but I've done what? I have taken the first character of the input provided, like here this input string ROCK, the first letter is R, so if it is R, then return rock basically. If it is P, return paper, and if it is S, return scissor. But I'm not returning ROCK in double quotes. It's not a string basically. I'm returning what? This thing we had just discussed. This is in the driver class. This ROCK, that is a final variable, static final variable defined in the driver class. We had just discussed about that. The rock means 1 and paper means 2. These are all final variables, static final variables, and that is the reason we may do like return driver.rock. Why driver.rock? Because rock is a static variable and you can access a static variable through the class name. You don't need an object. So here basically this function is returning either 1, 2 or 3, and else if he enters something else, then it's returning 0, right? So like the user is going to give an input in the form of like rock paper and scissors, and this return type is int. It will return back 1, 2 or 3 based on what the user is entering. Now we have discussed about the computer class, the player class, and we have to see the RPS class, and we have to see also the driver class. Let's see the driver class. Here driver class has basically the business logic that will help in comparison, like what the user is providing and the computer is providing and who is the winner. The main business logic lies here. Okay, so we had just discussed the constants are put here at the top. The driver classes class is having this instance variables like this, not instance variable because static variables. These are static final variables. The constants rock paper and scissors representing 1, 2 and 3. Now we have a function here called display. That is doing what? It's taking like a string who is entering the information and what he is entering, like what number he's entering. So who is like a string, like basically is the computer or the user, and int is just an integer number, and based upon the integer number, like he's putting 1 here, so we have used a switch case here. If it is 1, we are like we are displaying like player selected rock or computer selected rock or computer selected paper. Based on this switch case, like we are displaying, means this function is getting a int and a name, basically the name of the user or the computer, the person or the computer, and we are displaying here who has selected who has selected what. And here comes the business logic, the actual logic that compares what the user has entered and the computer has entered and who is actually winning it. So now let's see what is the function name. Like the function name is compare selections, and based upon this comparison it's returning again a int value rather than returning back like winner or loser or something. Like it's going to return a 1 or a -1. 1 represent winning and a -1 means not winning. So here let's see, in this function compare selections we have 2 int values that are being provided. Like whoever will call this function compare selection, he will provide 2 inputs. What are they? The user selection and the computer selection. Whatever the user has selected, like 1 or 2 or 3 based on the rock paper and scissors, and similarly the computer selection. Now here if user selection and computer selection are same, like return 0, it's like a tie. If both are same, then it is a tie. And here we have like taken up the user selection in the switch parameter, here user selection, and here the case rock and paper, means if the user selection is rock, then return computer selection equal scissor question mark 1 colon -1. This is a conditional statement, basically like it checks if the computer selection equals to scissors while the user has entered rock, then the user is going to what is going to win. The rock can destroy the Caesar, right? Rock can destroy the Caesar. Like computer selection is Caesar and the user selection is rock. So what will happen then? The user is going to win, and if it is not, like if it is computer selection is equal to Caesar, then it's like 1 means the user is winning, and if the computer selection is not Caesar, it's something else, then -1 means the user is not winning. Similarly, if the user is paper here and the computer selection is a rock, then the user is winning, that is returning. Basically, this function is returning like the user is winning or not winning. The user is winning or not winning. Is winning means 1 will be returned. If is losing, -1 will be returned. This is a conditional statement. This, if the condition evaluates to true, the first one will get returned. If it evaluates to false, the second one is going to be returned. So this case statements here, rock, is the user selection, basically what the user is selected, and here inside it we are talking about the computer selection. So when the user has entered rock and the computer has entered Caesar, then the user is winning, else the user is losing. So in this way, this is the main business logic that we have put within the driver class. Now let's move to the RPS class. This is containing the main function, and now we are going to utilize all the 3 classes which we have already created. So inside this RPS, which is containing the main function, we have few instance variables at the top, like the player classes variable, computer variable, and the player score, the computer score, and the number of games that has been played so far. So these are the variables at the top. And what is this RPS? This is a constructor, basically. This constructor's name is same as the class name, no return type, not even void. And here inside this constructor, we are doing what? We are initializing the instance variables with some values. So basically, when this RPS will be loaded, an object of this RPS will be created, or this constructor will get called. Like we are initializing everything, like the player object is created and a computer object is created, and all are initialized, the player score, the computer score, and the number of games, all initialized to 0, 0, 0. Now we come here to the main function. In the main function, we have done the initialization step by calling the constructor of the present class RPS, and just now we have discussed this constructor gets invoked, initializing everything. Now RPS dot get player name. What is this get player name? Okay, we may be having a function here in this RPS class called get player name that is going to help you to initialize the name of the user. It will ask for the user's name, the user can enter. Let's see. So get player name, if you come down, we must be having a function called get player name. Look at this, get player name. And what it does, player.askName. Remember, we had the player class, and the player object had a askName function that will ask for the user's name, and that gets stored in the player object. So this is what is happening. So here in the main, when we have called rps.getPlayerName, this is like getting the user's name from the user. So we created a user object, a computer object, and like we initialized everything. Then through this line, we are able to get the user's input. It's his name. Then rps.startGame. Here we have a function here in this class called startGame. So now it is calling the start game function. So here is the start game function. What is happening in the start game? Let's see. So player.getInput. So it's asking for the input from the player, basically. So that we are storing here in a variable called player input. Next, what we are doing, the driver.display player.getName and the player.getInput. Okay, we just have discussed in the driver class, we had a function called display that takes a name and the input, the user input, and this will do what? It will just display, okay, computer has entered rock, or the user has entered rock. That is what this display function will do, basically. Now next is computer.getInput. This is going to do what? It's going to take the input from the computer object. The computer class had a function called getInput. If you remember, in the computer class we had a getInput. here this is going to help the computer to return back a random number 1, 2 or 3. So that is what is happening here, that we are storing inside computer input. So basically we got the input from the user and the computer. One is player input and one is computer input. Then here also we are displaying, okay, computer has entered this or that, is entered, computer has entered rock, paper or scissor. Okay, now compare, we are going to compare it. So we have a function in the driver class itself to compare selections based on like what the user and the computer have entered. We will pass it here in the compare selection function. That is the main business rule that is present inside the driver.java. We had just discussed this one, compare selection, that is going to compare and whether the user is winning or losing, it will be returning back. So this function, this will return back a 1 or a -1 based on the user is winning or not. And now, and we are using a switch case to display the result basically. So here in the switch, like the compare result variable is put here. If it is 0, it is a tie. If it is 1, the player is winning. If it's a -1, the computer is winning. That is what we have displayed here. We had already discussed, like if it is returning 1, the player is winning. So system.out.println, the user, this player's name beats computer, you have won, and then the player score is incremented with 1, and then it breaks. And if it is -1, the computer is winning. The computer bits the name here, player.getName, and you have lost, and the computer score is incrementing here. So in this way this goes on, and we have incremented the game number also, like a number of games played so far. And then like if the player score has reached 5 basically, means the rule of the game was whoever wins 5 times, he is winning the game. So now if player score equal 5, then he has won the game. The player name, whatever name of the player, he has won the game. And it's again initializing everything again back. And if the computer is winning 5 times, then the computer is winning and you are losing it. And then it's asking if the player dot play again. So player class may be having a function called play again. So let's see if the player class has a function called play again. Play again, yeah. Here we have a function called play again. That is doing what? It's asking the user, do you want to play again? If yes or no. If it is like users or dot get input next line, it will take the input y or no. And then user input dot to uppercase means it's converting to y or n in capitals. Then it's returning a boolean true or false. Basically this line, it's returning a conditional statements value, user input dot char @ 0 equal y. If it is y, it's returning a 1, returning a true, or else returning a false. Basically it's returning true or false based on the player wants to play again or not. So that is being called here to figure out whether the player wants to stop the game or continue. Then after that, if everything is done, else if it doesn't want to play again, like we are printing the statistics, like whether means how many times the user has played and who has won ultimately. Like the print stats method here, which we created, number of games played is this much, and the player who owned the game is the computer or the whatever the user. Player.getName scores is this, and computer score is this. Everything prints through this print stats method. So yeah, so basically we have these 4 classes. You can just go to my website. I've provided the link, and you can either copy like this one by one and put it in Eclipse yourself and see, or else you come down to the download source code and get this downloaded. It will provide you it will get downloaded in the form of a WAR file. You can unzip it and put it directly in Eclipse, or you can go in this manner, copying each of the code and pasting it and going through the code again, try to understand it. And after you have understood it, you try to write the whole program on your own without copy paste. Try to understand it properly, then you try to write the program on your own. Okay, thanks. We can meet again with another video on a new topic. Thank you.